everyone, my name is Molapisi and welcome to yet another episode of Monday Tsene with Pretoria Psychologists. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about factors that contribute to Nyaope use amongst young black males. And we are all familiar, with men who will be sitting, in a township, if you are from the township like myself, who will be chilling on street corners, they'll be chilling in car washes. They'll be on, the streets helping you to climb a taxi or helping you to carry your luggage from the stop sign to your house. And normally we are quick to label them as Nyaope users. And this would be as, because of how they look. It could be, their clothes, their hygiene, how they talk, some of them, and also, the weight, some of them would be a bit more slimmer. And of course, this is not to say everyone who chills in those places that are using Nyaope, but that is where usually they would hang, and that is where usually would see themselves, being at. According to the Tsene report that was done in 2019, it was discovered that there was an increase in the number of young people who were, being admitted into rehab centers as a result of using Nyaope and also over-the-counter medicine and cannabis. So no doubt we can see that this is a problem in our society. But I wonder sometimes, before we can quickly label them as, people who don't have a future, or people who do not care, or people who we treat basically as an outcast, before stigmatizing them, do we ever stop and ponder, what could have been the causes or what could have been the contributing factors to them ending up where they are today? Some of the guys explain that one of the reasons why they ended up, finding themselves in a position where they are, that is a life of addiction using Nyaope, was because of, curiosity. One day we are chilling with friends, we are at a party, and then they're having a joint, and you ask for a joint without knowing exactly what's in there, So the occasional use, or something that starts an occasional use, it ends up, becoming a life of addiction without even you being aware that actually you slowly, getting addicted. They realize once, they are deep in. And it is said that, with Nyaope, it takes only two pull for an individual to find themselves, hooked to the thing. The other contributing factor that came through was loss. Dealing with a loss of a loved one. It could be, a loss of a home, a loss of a job, and basically the stress and the pressure, that comes with losing this particular thing or this particular someone that you actually valued, and how now you find yourself in this new reality that thing or that someone is no longer there. One of the participants explained the difficulty of how, he was, and even today, still struggling with the death of his identical twin, where he would, go to a shop, he explains, and then in the morning he goes to buy something, they see him, and later on maybe he goes home and washes himself or bathes himself, change of clothes, and you find someone saying that, hey, you know what, we saw your twin, during the day, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, not knowing that it was actually him. He explains that he would sit at a stoop, a porch at home, where he would just envision him and see him actually coming in. So that stress, that, grief, the unresolved grief of having to come to terms with, what just happened, and them not being able to cope, have them end up being in the cycle of continuously using the drug, because the drug, when he explains, it makes them feel calm, it makes them, forget. It gives them this temporary feeling of, you are okay, everything is fine. So now you get to see, Nyaope being used as this coping mechanism, as something that helps them to deal with situation. And I know some might say, but we experiencing the same things. We are from the same background in the township, the struggles that we find ourselves with, or we also have lost something. Why are we not doing this? But But doesn't that also, show the complexity of addiction and how complex addiction, can really be? The other one that came through was, not having the necessary support in your immediate environment. You had this one guy who is an immigrant who came here for a better life, and unfortunately, things did not go the way he wanted them to go. And what happened was he got evicted from his home, and now he found himself on the street and having to hustle, having to put clothes on his back, having to put food in his stomach, having to have shelter. But unfortunately, things were not coming together. And one can imagine the stress and the heartache, of having to go through that. And how do you cope? How do you deal with those kind of situations? So some of them now find themselves ending up using because of, at least it's a temporary fix. At least it's something that when I have taken, it makes me feel a bit better. So those are things that, on the overview, makes a lot of people end up using, or some of the people to end up using Nyaope, because of they are looking for a way to cope with the heartache that they might be going through. The other, last but not least, is one where friends are spiking a joint without you being aware. So maybe you used to one another rolling a joint, and then they spike it, and after spiking it, you pull, and after you pull, only later when you ask, okay, what's in that thing, then you realize, okay, there was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in the joint. And as they continuously smoke it, thinking to themselves, no, I can actually manage this joint, they end up being involved in the life of addiction. But what we see is that these young men, all of them, they still have dreams. They still want, to live a life where they have cars, they have houses, they're doing what their peers are doing, and they're having families. And basically, they still want to have a life, One thing that the government did during the pandemic, which was a blessing for some of them, which helped them to get into the road of recovery, was the initiative of having them putting them in a shelter, because now some of them, they're in the shelter, they have a shelter, they have food that they are being provided for, and as a result, they don't need to, go, or let me say, it's just one less stress, and now they can focus on what? On their journey of doing other things. The center also provided them with methadone, so some of them explained how, now I can dream again. Now I can focus on, trying to get back on my feet, because believe you me, I do not want to live this life. I'd like to get out of this life. So you realize how these men are also people, but living with addiction, and it is complex. And we get to realize how, for complex situations, there also need to be, multidisciplinary solutions, so we can be able to deal with the situation that they find themselves in. I hope you find this talk helpful.